Hello and welcome to Stop Using Internet Explorer. My name is Nathan Austin. I'll be presenting the session today. And behind the scenes, we've got Stephanie Kingsland, who will be producing and paying attention to the Q&A. So the reason why the title is Stop Using Internet Explorer is because there are some very specific reasons relative to this series that we've been doing in the last year around Microsoft 365. So basically by August of this year, a little bit of a punchline, but I'll get to that a little later, you will not be able to use Internet Explorer for Microsoft 365, or at least support is going away. So we're going to talk about some key end-of-life dates for Internet Explorer. And we'll do a little nostalgia for those of you who might remember back to the 90s. We'll also talk about where is Microsoft going and why. There are some actually very good reasons why Microsoft is going in the direction that it is. And there'll be a surprise as far as with whom Microsoft is collaborating for the future of a browser, and really ultimately to the benefit of all of us that get to use the internet and browsers. Then I'll go into a brief demonstration of the new Edge browser. That's one of the things we'll be talking about. So a little bit of a spoiler alert there. And then we'll go into some Q&A and recommended action items. In general, these sessions run around 30 minutes or half an hour. And it may or may not last that long today, but we're going to go through the content. It is recorded for your reference, and then we'll open it up. And for those of you who can stick around, we'll have any questions that we'll go through. For those of you who can't, we'll send a follow-up email with a copy of the recording, as well as some supporting information. All right. Before we dig in, I always like to hit just a little bit about MyTech. We are a business and technology consulting organization that really only works with small and medium organizations that are within an hour drive of our offices. Those are roughly the folks with whom we focus. What we've learned over the last 20 years is that we have a proven IT strategy. It's not the only IT strategy, it's just the one that we've found that really works, where we can deliver consistent and reliable and predictable results for our clients. So that's what we hope to find is folks that are looking for predictable, reliable, proven results. That ultimately remove IT challenges for you. Hopefully it makes IT easy for your team, and so you can serve your customers and your clients better and be more adaptable to business challenges that we all face outside of IT. If that's something you're interested in, we'd love for you to raise your hand and let's say hi and chat. But that's not why you're here today, so let's move on to the content, and we'll dig into why we're saying stop using Internet Explorer. Okay. All right, so the end of an era. So I'm going to tee this up from a standpoint of, for those of you who may remember what this might look like in what this sounded like, not what it looks like. I'm actually not going to, you're seeing a blank screen, that's intentional, but something that you may remember. Listen in. All right, so that is what I'm calling the end of an era. The reason why I brought that up and the reason why I thought to play that is because the beginning of Internet Explorer, Internet Explorer 2.x, was released on March 22nd, 1996. Yes, back in the day when we were all still using, if we were even using the internet, we were using it on dial-up. And so that was the wonderful sound that we've all are very thankful that we no longer have to listen to on a regular basis. But that's why I wanted to call it the end of an era. Internet Explorer has been around for a good 25 years at least, and it's going away. So another important date that I thought was interesting is Internet Explorer 11, the last version of Internet Explorer that's been developed, was released on November 13th, 2013. Think about what's changed since then. The pandemic, working virtually a lot more than we ever have before, and just all the security threats. Ransomware was probably just starting to come out around that time, and how prevalent that's become in our world, and the and all the need for us to be able to defend against it. Finally, another key point I thought that was a milestone item was how Microsoft Edge was released on July 29th, 2015. So those are some of the key dates as we've from an end of an era where we're transitioning to the use of Microsoft Edge. And let's see here, as we move on, the next one is some important dates for Microsoft 365. Now, the reason why we thought, other than security and staying current and some of the threats you might run into, which we'll talk about a little bit later, one of the reasons why we felt that this session was important for those of you who are watching now and those of you who potentially watch some of our other sessions around Microsoft 365 is that in August of this last year, in 2020, basically Microsoft announced some of these future dates that you need to be aware of. So for instance, November 30th of last year is when Microsoft Teams stopped supporting Internet Explorer 11. So if you were used to using Teams in the browser, fortunately there's a Teams app on your desktop or the phone, but if you've ever tried to access Teams in the browser, basically Internet Explorer 11 no longer supports that already. So we wanted to call that out, as well as if you've been using the there's actually, and I didn't even know there was a difference up until about several months ago, that there is an Edge HTML version, which is what they call the legacy version. That is actually going end of life here in a couple months. Well, about 45 days actually. So on March 9th of 2021. So it's important to note that if you're using, maybe you think, well, I'm already using the Edge browser. Well, it's important to check the Edge HTML versus the Edge Chromium, which we'll talk about. So because Edge, the old HTML version of Edge is going end of life. And Internet Explorer is still going to be around for a little bit, but the Edge HTML version is going end of life. And finally, for those, again, specific to the Microsoft 365 series and all the different training sessions and content we've been working on in the last year in particular, as of August 17th of this year, of 2021, Microsoft 365 stopped supporting Internet Explorer 11. So if that's what you as an organization have been using Internet Explorer 11, because maybe you've got other applications that are compatible with Internet Explorer 11, and that's what you've been using, be aware that as of August of this year, so basically they gave you a year heads up that Internet Explorer 11 is no longer going to be supported by Microsoft 365. For those of you who might be aware, there is, in Microsoft Edge, there is an Internet Explorer mode, which basically allows you to use the Microsoft Edge browser in a compatibility mode to support Internet Explorer applications. But Microsoft made it a point to note that says, even if you're trying to use Internet Explorer mode, it will no longer support Internet Explorer as of the August 17th date. So again, I don't know how many of you may or may not be using that, but there is a way to be able to use Internet Explorer mode in Microsoft Edge, but it's still not going to help you out relative to Microsoft 365 tools as of the end of this year. And why this is also important, because I know I mentioned Teams, but Teams has a mobile app, but there are a lot of Microsoft 365 apps that are only in the browser. And so this is really important for you to be able to be aware of and either plan a transition if you need to, and or maybe help your team facilitate this transition, which is one of the reasons why, and train them, and which is one of the reasons why we wanted to do this session. Okay. Next, so where is Microsoft going? This is the new logo of their Edge Chromium browser. We've talked about this browser before in this session, but what Microsoft is calling the Chromium-based Edge browser. Now, Chromium is actually an open source project from which you can take code and embed it into a browser. And so there are other browsers that use this same Chromium engine. As you noted, Microsoft Edge, not the Edge HTML legacy browser. So that's going away, as I mentioned, in March. So one of the reasons why Microsoft is going this direction, and again, this is I've got some supporting articles to show this and that illustrate this. It's been about 2 years since Microsoft announced that they're basically end-of-lifing the Edge HTML browser, and they're moving toward the Google's open source Chromium browsers. I said the Google is like it's now, but moving toward Google's open source Chromium browser. Ultimately, we benefit from this because as web browsers are becoming basically the conduit through which we access the information that we use, whether it's online shopping or bill paying or web applications, etc. The goal that Microsoft has stated is for better web compatibility and less fragmentation across different web browsers and different web platforms. So again, ultimately, that's going to be better for us as consumers of content and of browsers. And then there's several different browsers that use the Chromium engine. Of course, Google Chrome is one of them, but there's several others out there too. So, and one of the things that I'd like to illustrate, because this is ultimately Google's built open source engine, but there's some stats just to illustrate how much Microsoft is really investing in and down this platform and down this path. So since November 2019, Microsoft has actually submitted over 1,800 development changes, like suggestions and development changes to improve the Chromium engine from 161 different Microsoft developers. So many of us, including MyTech, don't have 161 people in our organization, let alone 161 different developers. But Microsoft has devoted considerable resources to making the Chromium browser and then Microsoft Chromium Edge-based browser. Keep saying that word and I keep getting my tongue tied. The Microsoft Chromium-based Edge browser. They've been devoting considerable resources to improving not only the Chromium engine, but how it functions in the Chromium Edge browser. Again, some of this might sound a little dull, but I think it's important to note there's a big reason why we recommend going in this direction. There is a reason why Microsoft is going in this direction, and we're just trying to illustrate how Microsoft is devoting a bunch of resources towards it, and effectively it's starting to become known as well, it's a Google product from an open source perspective. It's almost a co-project now between Google and Microsoft due to the amount of investment both organizations are putting towards the Chromium engine. All right, with that said, let's talk about the core problems that ultimately we're trying to solve here. We talked about the compatibility and the other browsers that are out there as really trying to move towards standardization across the internet and browsing experience for all the different applications and developers and tools that are available out there via the internet and via browsers. So this is I'm very excited that it's moving in this direction, but I'm going to tell you too that the problem has not been 100% solved, right? And I don't know if it ever will be. But one of the problems that you always have to be concerned about as far as keeping information and keeping applications up to date is security. So one of the reasons why we would definitely recommend moving away from Internet Explorer, at the very least, make sure that you're on the current version of Internet Explorer 11 if you have legacy applications or applications that were developed specifically for Internet Explorer. That's probably one of the biggest areas that we have seen across our clients that we've worked with, is those that are still running Internet Explorer are doing so because they have business applications that are only compatible with Internet Explorer. So be aware of that, and the Edge browser Internet Explorer compatibility mode might be an option for you to help keep the security around, but yet also be able to run in the compatibility for Internet Explorer. So keep that in mind if that's something that might affect you or be applicable to your organization, and we'd be happy to have those conversations and work with you to see if that might make sense. But ultimately, keeping this information up to date is really important to make sure that you can do your best to keep your organization secure, especially if you're talking about web applications or browser-based applications. Finally, beyond the compatibility in the alternate browsers that I mentioned, again, why there's a trend towards this, and there's a lot of browsers that are using the Chromium engine, which makes different applications that we all may use more compatible and fewer problems. But Microsoft is optimizing the Edge Chromium browser for Microsoft 365. So if your organization is a heavy user of Microsoft 365 tools and resources like we are and like a lot of our clients are, then this Edge Chromium browser, the new browser, is really where we should be moving, because you're going to get the best experience on Microsoft 365 tools. Okay, with that said, I'm going to throw a little asterisk out there. And some of you, if you've been using the Edge browser for a while now, you've probably experienced, especially if you log into different web portals that require you to sign in, I've definitely experienced where I've tried to log in to a different browser, or excuse me, a different application or different website, and nothing happens. And I'm like, well, wait a second, I swear I just entered my username and password, but it doesn't resolve, or it doesn't work, or something just seems a little off. Well, I've definitely found, well, because the Edge browser is relatively new. You know, again, as I mentioned earlier, Microsoft only a little over 2 years ago announced that it's moving in this direction. So there are still some idiosyncrasies in some applications that haven't been tested or developed for that. I believe those problems eventually are going to go away for the most part, but every once in a while, not very often, but every once in a while, I will run into a website or a portal, especially where I need to log in, or some functionality just doesn't seem to work. If you run across that, don't think it's you. Sometimes I like to default to that's probably user error. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. But one of the quickest ways to test that is to just use another browser. So I do have the actual Google Chrome browser on my laptop. I have the Firefox browser on my laptop, and I use them kind of in that order. The Edge Chromium browser is my default. I use that 95% of the time. The Google Chrome browser is pretty much next, and then Firefox if I need to test something different, or if I need to try something out that doesn't seem to be working in either of those. So I'm not saying that this is the only browser that you should have as far as the Microsoft Edge browser. I'm just saying that in particular for Microsoft 365 applications, that's where Microsoft is you're going to get the best experience. It's going to be optimized for your team. But there are definitely other things that you may be doing on your device, whether it be laptop or desktop, where different browsers might be warranted or necessary. So just acknowledging that. I'm not saying this is the only browser you should have. Okay, well, let's dig in, because I would like to show there are some cool things that the Edge browser does that you may or may not be familiar with. So what I'm going to do here, I'm actually going to pull up, that's interesting, I'm going to pull up a new tab here from the browser over into the view. All right, so one of the things, so this is the Edge browser. One of the things that I actually like right away is that, again, when we talk about Microsoft 365, there's several ways. I just hit new tab, right? Just opened up a new browser window, and you already notice there's a couple things. For instance, there is the waffle that you're familiar with. So if I click on this, this is the waffle that actually would launch right into my Microsoft 365 applications. I actually just learned this the other day from someone when we were going through a team training, because I saw it here, I just never really realized that's what it was. So there's the waffle. The other thing you can launch from, close that there, is that there's actually an Office 365 tab that's here on the feed. So this actually plugs in and starts looking into your frequent SharePoint sites, presuming it's authenticating and logging you in, or it's seeing you. It's actually looking at other, like the stop using Internet Explorer. This is what I've been working on recently, and so this shows up on my browser because I've already logged in with this browser many times. One of the things I like is, so I'm going to go to office.com. When I go to office.com, that's where, if you haven't done that before, this is where it's already logging me in as naustin at mytech.com. It's logging me in as my username, and it gives me all my applications. But one of the other things that you'll see down here, there's actually an all apps button here that launches, as well as I can click on the waffle and go to all apps here. So there's some quick and easy browsing tips that you can look at by going to office.com, clicking the waffle, clicking on all apps, or again, a lot of your applications are here along the side when you actually see what those look like. Again, you have to hover over them to see what they are if you don't recognize the icons, or you can click on the all apps icon here and all of your applications will pop up here as well. So there's a couple quick things that the Edge browser has done, and this is probably, if you go to office.com, you'll see these as well. That's not unique just to the browser, but there's a couple things, different ways to launch into Microsoft 365 using the Edge browser. So now I want to highlight a couple features in particular in this browser that you may or may not be aware of. I'm going to highlight collections. So I'm going to bring over this other browser here. So if you click on this corner up here, again, I like to highlight this section up here, right? So it's this collections, that's what they call it. And so this is where you could start a new you could have different collections. So if you notice, I have a collection here for MyTech sites and applications. So it's our SharePoint site, it's our website. I've got my forms saved here, my planner saved here, some dashboards that we use. So it's basically a favorites, but it's a collection of favorites. So, and I've saved these here, and it's really easy to use. I've actually created one for home bills. That's another one. If you click on this, it's just got, you know, Excel Energy. I didn't want to discriminate, so I'm just Centerpoint Energy, Connexus, Excel, etc. CenturyLink, Xfinity. I don't use all of those, but I just wanted to use it as an illustration. The other thing is that if you wanted to start a new collection, I'm going to say like home improvement. So it's really easy to use. And then I actually pulled up several different websites, so I'm going to add the current page really quick. Adds Home Depot. I also pulled up Lowe's. I'm going to add that page. It adds Lowe's. Not to discriminate, I add them in Menards. So I add that again, the homepage. And, you know, of course, I do some Amazon shopping. And by the way, if you don't know this about Amazon, if you go to smile.amazon, a percentage of your purchases, you can choose a charity to which a percentage of your purchases will go if you just simply use the smile.amazon site. So I use that, and I have my purchases. Some of a percentage of my purchases go to Cookie Cart here in Minneapolis. Great organization. But anyways, that's just a real easy way to use collections. And so, for instance, now I've got my home improvement collection, home bills, and some MyTech sites. So that's just something you could check out and try if that helps. It's really easy. If you select them, I want to delete them. I want to delete that one. I can delete it right there too. So I just got to check that box and then delete it. All right, so another one that I like to show is profiles. If you haven't seen this in the Edge browser, so if you click on this little, you can barely see it. It's my picture that is part of my the MyTech organization. When Teams or my email or anything like that, when my picture from my profile shows up, this is it. So that integrates then with the Edge browser. So this is my work picture, and then I've actually created a couple different profiles here. So I'm going to click on Manage Profile Settings, so you can see what this looks like. So this is my NS@mytech.com. I haven't got that syncing yet at the moment because I haven't set that up, but I wanted to use that as an illustration. This is also where I can go if I actually recommend that you use, so I've got a LastPass. I use LastPass as far as my password manager. And this is where you can go to basically turn off saving your passwords automatically. And payment info, you can also put that all into LastPass. But this is where you can manage all of that. And then I also have different profiles. So for instance, right now in this session, we use our demo account. So I'll have an Austin at mtp365.com because that's our demo tenant. And then I also have another user in here too. It's a department leader email at mtp365. So these are just different profiles you can have. And what I like about them is that it actually opens up a completely different browser window. I'll give you an example. So notice how this picture up here is different than this picture. I know it's hard to see, but the point is that all I did to get here is I clicked on this and I just hit the separate profile, right? Or if I can hit this, it actually brought up this profile. So, and I don't have an image associated with this one, but basically, this is one of the ways in which if you especially use Microsoft 365 for work, or if you're someone on your team and you might be testing some different scenarios, you can use the different browser. One of the things that's nice, again, if you're testing or if you need different browsers and you have to log in differently, is that the different profiles remember the respective different logins. So for instance, this is the department leader login that's used, and so I'm logging in basically into my Office 365 there, versus here I was logged into my MyTech Office 365 account. So it allows me to go back and forth in different scenarios if I'm testing, or if I just want to have a separate, like maybe it's a personal browsing experience that I've got a separate kind of login for that I manage. That's just one of the things you can do with the profile section. So that's actually something I think is really cool. That's the main reason why I use it. There's probably other reasons out there that I'm not thinking of as far as using that, but that's one of the reasons I use it. So is using just clicking on the little icon up here, and that's where you can see the different profile settings. And this is where you can add a profile really easily. So the other thing that I want to show you, so I'm actually going to pull up, let's see, I'm going to grab, I've got multiple windows open here, so forgive me, I'm trying to grab the right one. I'll I'll just click on it because that'll be an easy way to open it up. So I'm going to click on this one because this is the one I want. There we are. So, okay, so here is also a very cool feature. I'm going to use Planner as an example. So if you haven't used Planner, one of the last sessions we did was on Planner Task and To Do. I'm just opening up Planner right now. This is in our demo account for the sake of this. But one of the things you can do with the Edge browser is if you come up here to the breadcrumbs, that we call it the little breadcrumbs or the ellipses, is you click on that, there's actually a capability called apps. So you can actually say, well, I already got this one added. So basically I added this planner as an app. Let me see if I'm going to open up a different one to illustrate that. Because I already had it as an app, it's not allowing me to, I'll just use To Do. I'll use To Do. So I'm going to pick up To Do, open that up. Now it's an app. It might not let me do it because To Do is already an app. I'm just trying to find something different. Apps, install this site as an app. So what that allows me to do, again, this is in our demo account. So I can actually use the Edge browser, and I can effectively take a website that I go to and install it as an app, and then I can pin it like a shortcut, but I can pin it to my taskbar and basically allow it to be used. So when I click on it, it's just like as if I had downloaded and installed an application locally on my machine, but it just basically opens up a web browser window. It's a really cool function, especially when you have tools like Planner or SharePoint or some of these tools that are only really in browsers, that you can make it have an experience like it's an application, like all your other applications that you use. Okay, so that's one of the things I wanted to illustrate with the Edge browser. The other thing that I thought was really cool is mobile syncing. So I'm actually going to go to my other window here. So I could turn on sync. I'm going to click on Manage Profile Settings, and then I'm going to come down here to the phone and other devices. So what I did is I clicked on Manage Profile Settings, and I'm going to come down here to phone and other devices. And what I can do is this basically gives you step-by-step instructions. If I want my mobile device to be able to have my Edge browser synced with my office settings here from my laptop, I can basically use this, and it will keep my when I'm logged in here via Edge, it'll keep me logged in and synced to my local device here on your iOS or Android device too. So that's one of the capabilities I think is, and other browsers have that, like Chrome I think has that from what I understand. I don't use it, but this is something that especially from a Microsoft 365 perspective, you can sync these settings from the Office environment perspective. So I'm going to click back to the session here. So that's really what I wanted to do from a demonstration, is that there's several different things that the Edge browser makes it much easier to be able to optimize your Microsoft 365 experience, being able to use collections, being able to customize profiles if that makes sense for you, being able to manage your passwords and have a password manager embedded, which we'd highly recommend using a password manager, mobile syncing of information between your mobile and your work device, as well as web apps, and being able to pin some of those as if they were your regular applications. So with that said, here's a quick summary. Again, Internet Explorer is going to stop support of Microsoft 365 as of August 17th of this year. So if you're still using Internet Explorer, it's going to basically stop working for Microsoft 365 tools here later this year. If you're using the Edge HTML legacy browser, that is end of life here in about 45 days. So if you're using that, check that, because you're going to want to migrate to probably the Edge Chromium browser and get off of your Edge legacy HTML browser. And on the Chromium browser, a couple highlights, again, using profiles and sync to mobile, collections, again, how it's optimized for Microsoft 365 and being able to access those different tools. And then I love the function to be able to save web pages as applications. It gives you that experience of like an application without having to open up a browser, log into it. It's just a one-click shortcut on your task menu if you'd like. Okay, so thank you very much for attending. Some next steps, if there's anything, all these videos we post them to social media, and we also publish the recordings to YouTube. So if there's anything you'd like to subscribe to or like or follow to be able to make sure you stay in touch with all that information, please do that. If there's anything of value here, whether it be for colleagues or internal team members, by all means, please share this with them if this might help them make the change from Internet Explorer or go to Microsoft Edge and maybe find some good value out of using some of those tips from Microsoft Edge. Of course, we have future events. We're doing them every other week, and those are all published out at mytech.com/events. And if there's anything we can do to help, let's have a conversation. Raise your hand, and we'd love to chat with you. We're not always the best fit for everyone, but if we can be a great fit, if we could be of help for you, we'd love to at least open up the dialogue. So with that said, thank you very much for attending. For those of you who need to sign off, have a great day and take care. For those of you who have any questions, you want to stick around, let's open it up for some questions. Stephanie?
Thanks, Nate. There's no current questions right now.
All right. Well, not a huge surprise. I didn't expect this to be such a scintillating topic as far as using a specific browser. But those are some things that I would, those details that we talked about as far as in particular the collections and the apps and the syncing between devices are really powerful to give you and your team a better experience of using these tools. So if you haven't tried it out, I would definitely check it out. And it just makes it fewer clicks and gives a better experience when you are using the Microsoft 365 tools. So I understand every organization has different browsers that might be compatible with different web portals and different applications that they're using. And I'm not suggesting that you use the Edge browser if it's not the best browser for you. But in particular, as it relates to this series and Microsoft 365, as we spend a lot of time talking about, that's one of the reasons why we wanted to spend time on, for one, say stop using Internet Explorer because you're going to start having problems with that here this year because Teams has already stopped support for it. And secondly, move to the Edge browser, the new Chromium browser, because it'll give you and your team a better browsing experience. So one last call for questions, and if there is none, we'll just sign off.
Nope, no questions, Nate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. All right, everybody, take care and make it an excellent week.